Looking back on it now, I should have realized it was a midlife crisis earlier than I did. Right? I haven't bought a sports car or had an affair with my secretary, but other than that, I had all the classic symptoms. I'm obsessing over exercise. I'm getting back into the hobbies of my youth. I'm listening to music from this decade all of a sudden. And yet, it's not until I'm at the grocery store the other day and I catch myself singing, I'm a bitch and a boss, I'm a shine like gloss under my breath, that I think to myself, oh, hey, I'm having a midlife crisis, is what I'm having. Now, in my defense, though, I'm having it without the crisis part. I fully recognize that's just because I've been absurdly lucky so far in my life. I've got a great marriage to a woman that I adore. I've got a job that I love and that I draw an enormous amount of meaning from. Occasional heart attack aside, I'm in good health. I spend most of my days surrounded by at least the voices of my friends. I happen to belong to the very narrow class of people that my nation's ruling party isn't actively trying to take any major rights away from yet. So you can see how that kind of good fortune can blind you to a crisis, but that doesn't mean it isn't still there. The sort of cultural cliche of a midlife crisis is that it's about your dick not working. So, you buy a fast car to make up for your slow erections, but that's obviously not the real source of the thing because you don't need a dick to have a midlife crisis. What it's actually about is the stark realization of just how close dead is getting, right? Like it happens when you reach that point in your life where the years that you likely have left are fewer than the years that you can clearly remember in the past. And that's too depressing to make jokes about, so we pretend it's about dick stuff. Now, of course, it's about more than that for most people. I don't have kids, but a lot of people my age are also dealing with that transition to where, taking care of your kids is no longer the top 5 priorities in your life. For the very fortunate among us, it's a time when you might not need as much income, right? Maybe you're not paying for your kids. You don't need as big a house. Maybe you've even paid your house off. I hear that used to be a thing. But the point is that at this period in our lives, there's this transition through middle age into just old that is a major milestone that's common to nearly all of us, right? But it's given so little social appreciation that we don't even have a cultural framework for it that doesn't presuppose a crisis. Because I'm not actually having a midlife crisis. I'm just having a midlife. Getting into exercise, recapturing the joys of my youth, and rocking out to Doja Cat are all objectively good things. And yet we sort of filter all of them through this universal crisis. Our language demands it, where we could just as easily filter them through a lens of celebration. Consider our broad society's age milestones, right? When you're a kid, turning 10 felt like a big deal for some reason. Turn 13, that moves you to the vaunted rank of teenager. If you grew up Jewish, it's a much bigger deal, right? Likewise, turning 15 might be a really big deal depending on your heritage. 16 is huge regardless. 18 is both culturally and legally huge, as is 21. And then what? What's after 21? You're waiting on the senior discount and your letter from AARP, right? I mean, we make sort of an internal big deal out of every decade, but just enough to label it the big numeral O as it comes along. And of course, and here's where my self-indulgent birthday diatribe gently weaves into a very slight and very temporary relevance to atheism. A lot of the reason that we don't have this celebration is because our cultural framework is still largely tied to traditions that are hundreds and thousands of years old. 1,000 years ago, people my age weren't entering a new phase of life so much as succumbing to the cumulative effects of their lifetime of toil. It wasn't a time to rediscover yourself or reconsider your financial goals or indulge in your nostalgia. It was a time to limp along on the toes that you had left until you starved to death for your inability to till the land anymore or whatever. But things have changed. And we should drag our culture along for that change. As a society, we'd benefit enormously from more thoroughly recognizing that this is one of our biggest life transitions, looking forward to it, celebrating it. I'm not talking about having a huge cinquentenera. I don't know, or whatever a person's 50th birthday would be or whatever, although I am talking about that too. But what I'm saying is that we should look at this shift the way that we look at turning 18 as a shift in your life. A time to reassess, to reevaluate, to change, to give people a cultural off-ramp so they don't end up defining themselves by their occupation so much that they're scared to retire. Now, you might be saying to yourself, hey, Noah, we're not all lucky enough to be enjoying our midlife crises, and many of us don't want a cultural celebration of it. Many of us don't want to be reminded that we've run out of youth, and damn sure don't want a fucking bar mitzvah-sized celebration of it. And that's fair, right? But it also kind of misses the point. Much of the reason that we don't want to be reminded of our transition to old age is because we as a society don't celebrate it. And look, I know that to a certain degree, I'm just talking to my fellow olds here, but the point is universal. We act like culture is passed down and not created. Even those of us who have rejected religion still act like things like holidays and milestones of life are handed down from on high. And of course, this is the first obstacle to creating a better culture. And it's one that we atheists are better poised to overcome than anyone else.